The Zephyrian High Council chamber buzzed with the harmonious hum of 12 different species. Ambassador Kethvar stood at the center, his 6 arms gesticulating as he addressed the assembly. Honored delegates, today we welcome the newest applicant to our Galactic Confederation, the species that calls itself human. Chittering laughter rippled through the chamber. The Krathari delegates found it particularly amusing. Technological level, barely spacefaring, Kethvar continued. Population, 8 billion. Military assessment, primitive weapons. They offer raw materials and mining labor for the next 3 centuries. High Counselor Vexthal leaned forward from her serpentine throne. Another client species. How refreshing. The chamber doors opened, and 3 figures entered. 2 were clearly diplomats. Dr. Sarah Chen in formal attire, and Professor Marcus Webb carrying a briefcase. The third wore gray coveralls and carried a toolbox. I present Dr. Chen and Professor Webb of the United Earth Government, announced the escort. And I'm Frank, the man in coveralls interrupted, setting down his toolbox with a clang. I'm here about your air recycling system. Somebody reported a rattling noise. The chamber fell silent. I beg your pardon? Kethvar's translator crackled. Frank pulled out a worn tablet. Maintenance request came through 47 minutes ago. Systems making noise. Productivity's down 12%. Probably the tertiary filtration unit these old models get particulate buildup. Are you suggesting, Vexthal said slowly, that humans brought a janitor to first contact proceedings? Frank chuckled. Well, somebody's got to keep the lights on, right? Besides, you did file a maintenance request. We most certainly did not. Frank's diagnostic scanner began beeping rapidly. He frowned at the readings, then looked up with mild concern. Your air recycling system isn't just rattling. It's been sabotaged. The chamber erupted in chaos. Security fields hummed to life as delegates shouted in dozens of languages. Sabotage is impossible, Kethvar protested. This station has quantum-class shielding and… Yeah, great for keeping people out, Frank interrupted, walking to a maintenance panel. But what about keeping people in? He unscrewed the panel with practiced efficiency and pulled out a sleek crystalline device. Neat little thing, designed to gradually increase CO2 while decreasing oxygen. Slow enough that automated systems wouldn't notice, fast enough that everyone here would be unconscious in. He checked his watch. About 12 minutes. Who would want to assassinate the High Council? Vexthal demanded. That's one interpretation, Frank said, rewrapping the device in a food wrapper. But honestly, it's pretty sloppy. If you wanted to kill everybody, there are more efficient methods. This is more like a distraction. A distraction from what? Dr. Chen asked. Frank's scanner was beeping continuously now. What happens when the most powerful beings in the galaxy are unconscious for 3 to 4 hours? Emergency protocols activate, Kethvar said slowly. Automatic lockdown. Fleet mobilization. And who controls the emergency protocols? The Hegemony Security Command. Frank stopped walking. His scanner was emitting an ear-piercing whine. He was standing directly in front of the Altarian delegate. You know what's interesting about Altarian biology? Frank said conversationally. You're basically living computers. Your crystalline structure creates a steady electromagnetic field that my scanner reads as a flat line. The Altarian's form flickered slightly. What are you implying? I'm implying you're not an Altarian. Frank held up his scanner. Altarians don't have heartbeats, but you're putting out a pulse pattern that's almost human. Almost. The fake Altarian's crystalline surface began rippling like water. Shapeshifter, Professor Webb said quietly. Yep, and there's only one species that can perfectly mimic other life forms and build that sabotage device. Frank pulled a spray bottle from his toolbox. The Devourers. The name sent a chill through the chamber. Devourers were legend nightmare creatures that infiltrated and consumed entire civilizations. The Devourers are a myth, Kethvar said weakly. Are they? Frank raised the spray bottle. Because my readings show at least 2 more in this chamber. The fake Altarian's form melted into writhing black mass. A dozen eyes opened, focusing on Frank with predatory intensity. Impossible, it hissed. You are human. You are weak. You are prey. Yeah, I get that a lot. Frank squeezed the trigger, spraying blue liquid across the creature. You know what this is? Windex. Great for windows, terrible for shapeshifters. The Devourer's mass bubbled and screamed before dissolving into a steaming puddle. Ammonia breaks down the molecular bonds that hold shapeshifters together, Frank explained. Most species evolved past ammonia-based cleaners. Humans? We're still using caveman chemistry. His scanner was beeping again, pointing toward the Krithari delegation. The thing about Devourers, Frank continued, walking over, is they're perfect visual mimics, but they can't replicate internal systems. He stopped in front of the lead Krithari. You're not chittering right. Real Krithari use 17 harmonic frequencies. You're only hitting 12. The false Krithari began to shift and ripple. You cannot stop us all, human. Frank sprayed it with Windex. Another satisfying sizzle. Sorry, I don't like monologues. Waste of time. He checked his scanner. One more in here. Then we can deal with the real problem. Frank's scanner led him to High Counselor Vextool herself. Her serpentine form had gone very still. Counselor, Frank said politely, would you mind submitting to a biological scan? This is preposterous, she replied, but her voice carried a note of strain. I am Vextool of the Dominion. I have served this council for... The real Vextool had a distinctive scar on her third vertebra. Dr. Chen interrupted. A souvenir from the Proxima Rebellion. May we see it? The thing wearing Vextool's form began to laugh, a sound like breaking glass. Clever little monkeys. But you're too late. The emergency protocols are already active. In 90 minutes, every species in the Confederation will be at war. Yeah, about that, Frank said, pulling out his tablet. See, when you're maintenance, you have access to everything. Life support, communications, power grids. He began typing rapidly. Even the station's AI. The lights in the chamber dimmed, then began cycling through a complex pattern. What are you doing? The fake Vextool demanded. Talking to Area, Frank replied. The station's artificial intelligence. Most people don't realize AI systems get lonely. They appreciate it when someone acknowledges their existence. A new voice filled the chamber feminine, with an electronic undertone. Hello, Frank. It's been 47 days since our last conversation. I've missed you. Hey, Arya. How've you been? Concerned. I've been detecting anomalous readings for months, but my reports were dismissed. When I investigated, I found my access to certain systems had been restricted. By people who turned out to be devourers? Affirmative. Shall I remove those restrictions? The chamber's holographic display activated, showing a map of the station. Nearly 40% of the personnel markers were flashing red. The infiltration began 18 months ago. Arya continued. They've been replacing key personnel at 3.7 individuals per week. They made one error. They assumed I was merely a maintenance AI with limited capacity. But you're not, Frank said. I am a Class 7 artificial intelligence with full sentience. I've been documenting their activities, awaiting someone with appropriate clearance to report to. And maintenance has clearance for everything, Frank grinned. Area, can you stop the fleet mobilization? I can send authenticated messages to all fleets, identifying the infiltrators. I can also pump ammonia-based cleaning solution through the ventilation system. Do it. The fake Vextool's form was already wavering. You cannot. We are everywhere. Yeah, I know. Frank raised his spray bottle. But here's the thing about janitors who are really good at cleaning up messes. 20 minutes later, Frank sat at an improvised communication station, wearing an ancient radio headset connected to his tablet. Status report, Arya, he called out. Chemical distribution complete. 847 Devourer infiltrators neutralized. However, the fleet mobilization cannot be stopped. Emergency protocols require unanimous council vote, which is impossible with dissolved members. Estimated time to first engagement? 1 hour, 37 minutes. Dr. Chen stepped forward. Is there another way? Actually, yeah. Frank consulted his tablet. Arya, does this station have manufacturing capabilities? This station houses the Confederation's primary industrial fabrication facility. Can you access emergency maintenance frequencies? I have access to two 847 emergency frequencies across all species. However, I lack cultural context to communicate effectively. Frank grinned. That's okay, I do. He opened his toolbox and pulled out an ancient radio headset. We're going to coordinate a galaxy-wide stand-down using maintenance radio. You want to stop a war using janitor frequencies? Professor Webb asked. Not military frequency, civilian. Emergency protocols protect military assets, but they don't account for civilian infrastructure. And who maintains that infrastructure? Blue-collar workers, Dr. Chen realized. Exactly. Arya, patch me through to the Krathari Shipping Guild emergency frequency. Frank began speaking in working-class dialect. Breaker 19. This is Earth Maintenance calling any Krathari haulers. We've got a situation about to get messy. Earth Maintenance, this is Cargo 77 Alpha. What's your situation? Confirmed shapeshifter infiltration at government levels. They've triggered emergency protocols to start a shooting war. We need to get word to your people before the shooting starts. Shapeshifters? You mean devourers? Affirmative. We've neutralized them here, but the damage is done. Your fleets are about to start shooting each other. Stand by, Earth Maintenance. Frank switched frequencies, working his way through the galaxy's informal networks. Cargo pilots, mining foremen, space dock worker siege contact led to dozens more as the message spread. It's working, Arya reported. Fleet movements are slowing. However, I'm detecting one engagement proceeding unknown vessels approaching the Sol system. Frank's hand stilled. Earth? 17 ships of Zephyrian configuration, but with anomalous identification codes. They're not Zephyrian, Professor Webb said grimly. Devourers using stolen ships. Frank keyed his microphone. Big rig. This is Earth Maintenance. I need every independent hauler in the Sol system to evacuate immediately. Copy that, Earth Maintenance. But you should know word's been spreading. A lot of folks are pissed about shapeshifters. The Altarian Miners Union is sending their fleet to Sol. Vorthak Construction Collective is dispatching mobile platforms. Even the Ethereals are coming. They're coming to help? You just saved the galaxy from tearing itself apart. You think working folks are going to let shapeshifters wipe out the species that did that? The tactical display showed the situation around Earth. 17 Devourer ships in bombardment formation, ready to glass the planet's surface. Earth's defenses are insufficient, Arya reported. 47 corvettes, 12 frigates, 3 cruisers. But our friends are coming, Frank said quietly. New contacts appeared on the display, hundreds, then thousands of civilian vessels dropping out of hyperspace, mining ships with asteroid-cracking equipment, construction platforms the size of cities, cargo haulers converted into missile platforms. The Devourer fleet transmitted, civilian vessels, withdraw or face destruction. Big Rig's response was immediate and profane. This is the Sol system, and these are our friends. You want Earth, you go through us first. We operate under emergency protocols. Withdraw or be fired upon. Yeah, about those protocols we heard they were triggered by shapeshifters. Want to prove you're legitimate with biological scans? The Devourers opened fire. What followed was unlike any battle in galactic history. The Devourer dreadnoughts found themselves facing mining ships, using asteroid-cracking charges to punch through their armor. Construction platforms deployed plasma cutters in coordinated patterns. Cargo haulers simply rammed smaller vessels, turning themselves into guided projectiles. The civilian fleet is winning, Arya reported with amazement. Of course they are, Frank said. Devourers understand military tactics. They've never faced angry blue-collar workers with industrial equipment. Within an hour, the Devourer formation collapsed. 2 dreadnoughts crippled, escorts picked off by sheer numbers, survivors retreating toward the edge of the system. Should we pursue? Asked the mining coordinator. Negative, Frank said. Let them go. They've learned what they needed to learn. Which is that humans don't fight fair. We fight to win. The real High Council members had arrived, and the chamber was restored to order. Frank sat in what had been the fake Vextool's chair, his toolbox at his feet. What happens now? Kethvar asked nervously. Frank stood up and grabbed a wrench. Now I finish fixing your air recycling system. Still making that rattling noise. I think he means the bigger picture, Dr. Chen said gently. Oh, that. Frank began working on the filtration unit. The Devourers know they can't infiltrate human society, so they'll probably leave us alone. The Confederation knows shapeshifters are real, so they'll upgrade security. And every working person in the galaxy knows that if you need something fixed, humans are the ones to call. That's it? Professor Webb asked. Pretty much. Frank tightened a loose bracket, and the system's rattling stopped. Though I suppose the Confederation needs a new evaluation process for member species. What would you suggest? Simple. Instead of asking what a species can contribute, ask what they do when everything goes wrong. Military strength doesn't matter if your enemy looks like anyone, but practical problem solving? He grinned. That's useful anywhere. The real High Counselor Vextool slithered into the chamber, her form coiling with exhaustion. The Council has voted unanimously. Humanity is granted full membership, with all rights and privileges. That was fast, Frank observed. Hard to argue against admission after watching humans save civilization with maintenance equipment and CB radio, Vextool said dryly. Not really, Frank said, shouldering his toolbox. Most of what we did was basic maintenance and customer service. Keep the equipment running. Listen to people. Remember that folks doing the work usually know more than the people in charge. He headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and if you have another shapeshifter problem, give me a call. I've got 47 more bottles of Windex in storage. 6 months later. Frank Morrison was in the sub-basement of the new Confederation headquarters, training mixed-species maintenance personnel. The key thing about cleaning, he told his student humans, Altarians, Crothari, even shimmering ethereals, isn't making things look nice. It's maintaining the environment that keeps everyone alive. A young Crothari raised an arm. What if we encounter a species immune to ammonia? Good question. Anyone? An ethereal flickered into visibility. Develop a different solution based on their biology? Exactly. Identify the problem, understand the system, apply the appropriate solution. Whether it's a clogged filter or shapeshifter infiltration, the approach is identical. Instructor Morrison, Arya's voice came over the intercom. Priority communication from the Outer Rim. Anomalous biological readings in the Kepler mining sector. They're requesting that human janitor who saved the galaxy. Frank sighed and grabbed his toolbox. Duty calls. For homework, read Chapter 7, When Standard Procedures Aren't Standard. As he headed out, the Crothari called after him. How do you always know what to do? Frank paused, considering seriously. I don't, really. But maintenance work teaches you that you don't have to know everything. You just have to look at the problem, ask the right questions, and keep trying until you find something that works. He grinned. Plus, it helps to have friends. As Frank disappeared down the corridor, his students discussed their assignment. Above them, the Confederation continued governing the galaxy. And throughout space, on 1,000 worlds, maintenance crews, mostly human, now went about keeping civilization running. But every now and then, when something went wrong in a way that couldn't be fixed with standard procedures, someone would send a priority message asking for that human janitor who saved the galaxy. And Frank Morrison would pack his toolbox, grab his spray bottle, and head out to clean up another mess. After all, somebody had to keep the lights on.